I think I'm live. I'm supposed to be live. This is the very first time that I'm doing a live stream, so can you guys let me know that everything is working? Can you hear me? Can you see me? Is this all functioning? Let me know. Please let me know before we start. I have a phone here with the live chat so I can see everything that you're saying. Is this working? Can you guys hear and see me? Let me know. Let me know if this is all working. Let me see. Hi, David Perez. Hi. So, Georgely, yes, it's working. Oh my God, we are live for the first time ever. This is so exciting, guys. So I can see the live chat going on my phone, which is a bummer. It's a bummer because I want to see everything that you're saying over here. Let's see how I can get that to work before we start with all the questions. Okay, I think it's working. And we're live. Bernd Gerbil. Hi, everybody. It's nice to see you all here. Thanks for tuning in. A lot of guys are coming in. Thanks a lot for tuning in, guys. So let's have some fun here. Let's stay relaxed. I'm not really used to doing live stuff. I'm used to really, editing my my videos so that everything is all lined up perfectly and that I don't, fumble over my English, because I'm not English, of course. I'm from the Netherlands, which is in Europe, in case you didn't know. And yeah. So I was planning on releasing a very, very exciting video today, a very big video. It's a 6.5 hour long amp demo. I'm sure you've seen my other videos, the one song, one amp series that I've been making. And I've made a huge compilation of 6.5 hours long with all 33 amps all lined up, both isolated and in the mix, and with time codes and everything. And it took like a month to complete. And I was ready to release it. I already had rendered it twice because I noticed some mistakes in the final video, which is a challenge in itself, of course, because in order to find an error in a video of 6.5 hours long, that's not super easy. So and today I was planning on releasing it. I had made some teaser videos. And then I just went through the time codes and I noticed that one amplifier was totally messed up. I had messed up the audio. So I had to go back and change the whole thing again. So that was a big bummer. So I'm re-rendering the video now. And that's going to take another 13 or 14 hours. And then I'm going to upload, which is going to take 3 to 4 days. So yeah, we're going to have to wait a couple days. And then I'm finally going to be able to release this video. And I hope you all will enjoy it, and I hope you all will watch it and share it and all that good stuff. So stay tuned for that. Now I can tell you a little bit about that video before we get into the questions. About a year ago, I had released a video which was called, I think it was called One Riff, 22 amps or something, or 24 amps. I'm not sure how many amps I had back then. And it did quite well. In fact, it was my best viewed video ever, and it got like 150,000 views, which is quite crazy. So it snowballed like crazy. I had a lot of fun making that video because it's always a lot of fun to try all my amps out, and give them all a go again. So I thought, how can I make this even more epic? Well, first of all, I wanted more amps, so I made sure that I had 33 amps for this new video. And I also wanted to do more than just one riff, because people complained that it was a little bit one-sided, it was this one guitar with this distorted sound. So I thought, okay, let's do this bigger and better. Let's do some clean tones with a nice guitar. So I used my Telecaster for the clean tones, both on the bridge and neck position, because those are both very common, pickup settings to use for clean tones. Then we have a crunch section with my ESP LTD Elite Eclipse with Seymour Duncans, for that classic British crunch tone. And then we have a sort of heavy rock segment with my Jim Root Telecaster with EMGs, so that's, you know, heavy hard rock riffs. And then we have a solo section with my Ibanez guitar, with my pink Ibanez. And then finally a baritone boosted metal section. So I wanted to do that all in one song and put all 33 amps through that song, or that song through all the amps, I should say, both in the mix and isolated. So that was basically the idea behind it. And I just started, you know, with the song. I made the song and I started reamping that track through all of my amps. And I think about half of the tracks are on my channel right now. So that's about 15 or 16, maybe 17 videos right now. And this final epic compilation, which will come out very soon, will have 33 amps and you'll be able to skip through them all with the time codes and everything. So it's going to be huge. Somebody please call the Guinness Book of Records, because I don't think anybody else ever did anything like that. So yeah, I'm super excited. I have one question for you guys though. Until the final release, which it will be in like 4 days or something, should I keep on releasing some of the single episodes, like for the Marshall JMP1, for example, or the Angle Iron Ball, or should I just wait, hold off, and wait until the the final big release? Let me know what you guys want, and I will consider that. So do let me know. I'm just gonna check out the chat. There are some questions here already, so that's cool. Love the single videos as well. David, thank you. That's a good idea. All right. All right. Well, I'm just going to start off with some questions in the live chat right now. And I also have some questions prepared, just some random questions that people have asked on the channel. So if there are no questions in the live chat, I will go back to those questions. I'll start at the top. So, are you Ownhammer? You are Ownhammer. He is Ownhammer. I am not Ownhammer. My name is John. I work for Ownhammer. Ownhammer is accompanied by a good friend of mine, Kevin, in the United States. And like I said, I live in Europe. I live in the Netherlands. My function is the product specialist. And Kevin is the one who creates all these wonderful impulse responses. He has an amazing, amazing collection of cabinets and speakers, both modern and vintage. I mean, you would not believe his collection. And he's the one who creates all the impulse responses. So he's the magician, the tone magician, so to speak. He is incredibly talented. And it's an honor for me to work for him. So just to give him all the credit, you know. I make the product demos and I talk to you guys sometimes about the products. But he is the one that's behind the company that creates all the magic. So yes, I am not Ownhammer, at least not by myself. But thank you for the question. What are my top 300-watt amps? Well, it depends on how we look at it. I mean, amps that I already own or amps in general, because, for example, I would love to try a Dsl VH4 one day, or even a VH2 would be incredible. But I've never played one, so it's hard to say. And I do not have many 100-watt amps. I have a couple. I have this Angle Fireball 100 right here, and I have my Mesa Boogie Dual Rectifier, of course. I have my Marshall JVM 410H, which is also 100 watts. And that's about it. So, of course, this PV6505 right here is a 120-watt amp. So that one doesn't count. So those three that I just mentioned basically, for now, are my favorite 100-watt amps. However, you know, if I were ever able to get like a Friedman Brown Eye or a Dsl VH4, or the list continues, of course, I would love to include them in the list. But for now, the 100-watt amps that I just mentioned that I have in my collection are pretty much my favorites. Thank you for the question. Let's see, what other questions do we have here? Hi, Brent. I'm on the Orange Amp Owners Group. Yeah, it's a great group. I love Orange amps. I love them a lot. Netherlands, yes. Do you do amp rentals to studios in the Netherlands? I do not think so, no. This is my private collection, so I don't think that that would be something that I'd get into. But thank you for the question. Yes, it's my private collection, indeed. One song for the MH. Okay, so you want, so Redent 10 Fire. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly. He wants to see the one song for the Pv6505 MH. So, okay, I'll release that one soon. If you guys all agree on the fact that I will release a couple of the single episodes before the release of the big one in a couple of days. Because in the beginning of the video, I was just explaining that that video release got delayed, unfortunately, because of an error that I discovered in the video. So I had to go back and change that. So the video is rendering now and it's going to upload, but it's going to take like 4 days, which is crazy because it's 6.5 hours long in 4K. Yeah, so it's like 120 gigabytes or something. It's really large, and my computer is okay, but it's not great at video rendering and all that stuff. So it's going to take some days, and again, I'm very sorry for that delay, but hopefully this live Q&A thing will be fun. If it's fun, and if it's also fun for you guys, I'm going to do this more often. So that should be fun. What IR would you use for Drop A from the Heavy Hitters Collection Volume 2? And that's a question by Gurgly Kiss. Gurgly. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. I'm very sorry, but I'm going to say Gurgly Kiss. Gurgly Kiss. That's an interesting name. Drop A from the Heavy Hitters Collection, Volume 2. Interesting. Well, in the Heavy Hitters Collection Volume 2, we have some 4x12 cabs. We have an Emperor, the EMPR, and we have an EVH cabinet. And of course, we also have a couple of 2x12s from Zilla. And, well, you know, it really depends on your guitar. It depends on your pickup. It depends on your modeling platform or your amplifier and all that stuff. Because I think you'd be able to get a great, you know, low chugging drop A tone out of any of those cabinets or speaker options. Maybe start with one of the Zilla cabs has an M25 greenback speaker in it. Maybe try that one. And if that sounds a little bit too big, maybe try the V30s in every cabinet. And you can even try the custom mixes section, which has some really interesting mixes by Kevin as well. They have interesting names like Soap and Thor. Look for those mixes and try those out as well. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of great IRs in that pack for low tuning, so it's all a matter of experimenting. To keep things very simple, I always recommend going to the summary folder or the quick start folders first, and you know, keep it easy. Don't try every file, just try some of those first and explore a little bit to find out which cabinets and which speakers you're enjoying the most. And when you find a speaker that you're really digging, maybe go to the quick start folder for that one and find some single mic options and or mix files that work for you. And from there you should be able to get some great results very quickly. And if you don't, always feel free to hit me up and ask me questions. All right, keep shooting the episodes. All right, thank you, thank you. Small video releases are good. All right, thank you. Yes, let's see. Hello, is the Randall Diavolo will be in the next big video? Unfortunately not. I had a Randall Diavolo 45 for a little bit. That was like a couple of years ago, back when I just started with the whole tube amp thing. Believe it or not, it's a pretty recent thing actually. I had one for a little bit and I really enjoyed it. It sounded really good for metal. Really tight and aggressive, and the clean tones were pretty nice as well. But I decided to send it back then because I needed something that was a bit more versatile. Now, I would love to get one of those amps again one day. You know, in fact, I would rather try the Randall Diavolo 100 because it has an extra channel, so that would be cool. But you don't see them around very often. And I heard that the Randall amps, that the service isn't great, so if it breaks down it's going to be a little bit hard to get it fixed. But who knows, you know, maybe I can contact Randall and see if they want to send me an amp or something. That would be cool. I would be open to something like that, so we'll see. I'd love to try one. But sorry, no, Mathieu Lionel, it won't be in the big video, unfortunately. But 33 other wonderful amps will be, so stay tuned. Give away an amp. Haha, David. That's not going to happen, but not a bad idea. No. Hi from Italy. Hi, Dr. Vibo. And I saw Led Zeppelin Have you ever tried a Mesa Stiletto? It's a pretty widely disliked, but I think they are misunderstood and underutilized. Would love to hear what you could do with one. I would love to try a Mesa Stiletto, and sometimes I have been looking for them on the used market here in the Netherlands, and you do see them from time to time, and they usually cost between 700 and 1,000 euros or something. So that's not really expensive, but I don't really, I'm not really sure of how that amp sounds. I need to do a little bit more research first. So in a little time, when there's some free budget, I'll look into more amps, and maybe I'll consider one of those. But the amp that I would want the most right now would be a Diesel VH4, but that's a little bit out of reach because they are not cheap. So maybe a VH2. That would be great, wouldn't it? Yeah, maybe. But yeah, I think it would be awesome, a Mesa Stiletto. I mean, I heard it's kind of like the Marshall from Mesa Boogie. So it sounds like a very interesting concept, and they look very cool as well. So yeah, I'd love to try one. Who knows? Never say never. Never say never. Josh says, all the clips and demos I've heard of the Badlander sound like a Mesa made for Marshall. What do you think? How does it sound into your ears? Thank you. Well, Josh, the first videos that I heard were from Ola and Fluff. And the Ola video was all right, I guess. I think, it sounded pretty good. The Fluff videos, I didn't really personally like. I didn't like the sound myself. One of the reasons was probably that he initially put a boost in front of it right away. And I'm not a huge fan of boost pedals in front of my high gain amps. I love my high gain amps pure without a boost, usually. So I really wanted to hear how the amp sounded without any pedals in front of it. And eventually Mesa Boogie came out with a video like a week ago or something, I'm not sure. And I really thought it sounded great in that video. So then I was like, all right, I mean, that's great. I want to hear this amp. And I did contact Mesa Boogie, but my channel isn't huge, so I don't think they'll send me one. But who knows, if enough people ask, feel free to tell Mesa Boogie that you want a Badlander on my channel. Who knows? Never say never, and never say never. But they're not cheap, again, and my budget has to allow for me to buy one of those amps. They seem like wonderful, wonderful amps, but for now I'm pretty content with my dual rectifier, my mini rectifier, and my Mesa Mark 5 35. So yeah. But yeah, I think it seems like a wonderful amp, for sure. David Perez asks, what is your favorite speaker other than Vintage 30 for heavy tones? Ha, great question. Well, I love Vintage 30s. I'm not one of those people who's going to say, like, Vintage 30s are bad, everybody uses those, and, all that stuff. I love Vintage 30s, and there's not one Vintage 30. In fact, there are many. And my friend Kevin from Ownhammer, he has, like, the biggest collection of Vintage 30s you can ever imagine. UK made ones, Chinese made ones, ones they made for Marshall, ones they made for Orange, ones they made for Mesa Boogie, from different eras, 8 ohms, 16 ohm, and they all sound unique. And yeah, so there's a lot of different tones to find just within the V30 speaker category, so to speak. So I'm just a sucker for V30s. I'm very sorry, but I'm not so sorry because they just sound awesome. They work. People use them a lot, and that's for a reason, because they just work in a mix very well, especially with high gain tones. Having said that, I do like greenbacks from time to time. In fact, one of my favorite speaker options, or a couple of my favorite speaker options from the Ownhammer IR collections, are the orange 2x12 cabinet with the M25 speaker in it, which is great for, gent and heavy metal and stuff. And that same speaker, I'm not sure if it's the exact same specimen, but the M25 in the Trad from the California Duo, which, is the 4x12 traditional cabinet from Mesa, but with the greenback M25 speaker in it, also sounds really awesome. And then for really tight and bright sounding amps, the ORN, the 412 ORN from the Heavy Hitters Collection Volume 1, also has an M25 speaker option in it. And that's great for complementing those sort of shrill sounding amps and make them sound huge. So I guess next to the V30, the M25 is also a very nice speaker option as well. All right. Let's see. Rodrigo Sales. Hey Jan, I live in Brazil. It's too hard to buy those great amps here. Haha. So I'm more of a plug-in guy. Which are the best ones around in your opinion? Oh, plugins, you mean? There are a lot of great plugins these days. A lot of great plugins. Did I just see a super chat? Thank you so much. That's my first ever super chat. When I scroll down and I see the message, I'm gonna give you a thanks. Oh, David Perez, thank you so much for your super chat. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Really appreciate that. Just gonna scroll back. Okay, so the best plugins. Let's see. My favorite guitar effects amp plugin is Helix Native by Line 6. I think it's amazing. It sounds great. It's so easy to work with. You know, it loads impulse responses. It has some nice reverb. It has amazing effects, amazing modulation, filters, delays, and everything. It's a lot of fun to work with, and it sounds like my Helix rack, and it sounds like my HX Stomp and everything. So, you know, I highly, highly, highly recommend Helix Native. In fact, in most of my videos that do not include tube amps have Helix Native. So, yeah. I'm really, really fond of that plugin, and I recommend it to everyone because it's simply amazing in my opinion. It sounds so damn close to my real amps. I've done a couple of comparisons on my channel as well, and yeah, it sounds very close to the real deal. So yeah, that's what I recommend. That's my favorite, definitely. But there definitely are some other cool ones out there as well. I mean, for example, the new Amplitube is supposed to be cool. I haven't tried it. I have sent them a message to see if they would, you know, give me a copy to try out for a video. Who knows? It looks promising, but yeah, I haven't tried it yet. So for now, without a doubt, Helix Native is, in my opinion, the best plugin for guitar tones out there. Definitely, most definitely. All right. Burnt Gerbil. More 8-string guitars in the demos would be awesome. That would be awesome indeed. Thanks for letting me know. I mean, I have this little beast right here. Check this out. This is one of those guitars that I'm never going to get rid of. This is my trusty Ibanez M80M Meshuggah 8-string guitar. 29.4 inches scale length. 8 strings. It's an unbelievably nice guitar, and I really need to use this on my channel more. So thanks for mentioning 8-string guitars. I agree. We need more 8-string music on the channel, so thank you. Thanks for letting me know. And Maynard Coolidge asks, are you doing production work or just YouTube? I do production work as well. I do some mixing for bands, and I've made videos and audio segments for various companies such as Slate Digital and Native Instruments and some other companies. So if you're interested in hiring me for mixes or any other production things like programming drums or reamping, feel free to shoot me a message, preferably via the Facebook of my Facebook page or Instagram, and we'll work something out. Okay, let's move on. Cast 390 asks, hey John, have you ever considered doing side-by-side reviews of amp modelers like Kemper, Helix, Axe-Fx, etc.? I have done a bunch of side-by-side modeling platform comparisons in the past, like usually I include a real amp as well. So I've done one for the dual rectifier, and then I include the Axe-Fx and the Helix, etc. I could do a bunch of more. I could do a bunch more, definitely. That would be cool. I have a bunch of amps that I would want to compare to modelers, but there are some issues there because, for example, I would love to compare my Mark V 35, but I don't have any modeling platform that models that exact version of the Mesa Mark V. So that's, I mean, that one has EL84s in the power section, and you know, the other Mark amps, they have like 6L6s or whatever. So that's immediately a factor where people are going to say, well, it's not a fair comparison because they have different power tubes, etc. And they're voiced differently, blah, blah, blah. Also, my Rockerverb my orange Rockerverb 50 Mark III, which is one of my all-time favorite amps, as you probably already all know. I'd love to compare that to the XFX as well, but I think the XFX's model is based on a Mark I or Mark II, and those are just a bit differently voiced, so you know there's immediately a problem there if you want to compare those. But having said that, it could be fun to do more comparisons. I have a long list of comparisons and things that I want to do in the future, so it's definitely something to consider. Yeah, maybe I'll do like a Helix versus XFX video or something like that. Alright. Let's see if we have any more questions. Suomi Perkele. I'm not always entirely sure how to pronounce your names. If I pronounce your name wrongly, I apologize. I'm very sorry. But Suomi Perkele, because of your amp videos, did any brand contacted you an amp for a demo? I have been contacted by a couple of companies to make demos for them. With the amplifiers, in most cases, it was on my initiative. So I was the one who contacted them and asked them to, you know, can we get one of your amps on my channel, etc. I've been contacted by companies for pedals. That happens a bit more often. But it's going to happen a bit more now. I'm noticing that it's happening more. So I'm going to get some more amps on the channel from various companies, and it's going to be very exciting as well. So stay tuned. Stay tuned. And if you want to have some influence there, always feel free to contact amp companies and let them know that you like my channel and that you think, you know, my amp demos are good, hopefully. And then feel free to let them know that you want an amp featured on my channel. Who knows, it might help to accelerate that process. Okay, so Gurgely. Oh, I'm so sorry, I did not pronounce your name correctly. It's not Kish, it's pronounced Kish. Gurgely Kish. Thanks for letting me know. I'm sorry for pronouncing your name in the wrong way. Keep in mind that I'm also Dutch, so I'm half English, half Dutch. So I'm not the very best at pronouncing English words. In fact, a couple of years ago, I made a video on a Helix amp model, the Placator Dirty. And, you know, because of my Dutch language, I pronounced it placider or something. Really, it was really dumb. I wasn't aware of that word, placator. And people were really harassing me and bullying me on my channel. So sometimes I pronounce things wrong, especially names from other countries, so I apologize for that. Misha Bloomberg. Hey dude, didn't know you streamed. Well, this is my first stream ever, so thank you for tuning in. I hope the video quality and audio quality is okay. It's probably not the best because I'm using my tablet for the video and audio. I'm gonna need to upgrade my setup a little bit on my PC with my mic and a proper cam, but for now we're just gonna do this on the tablet. I'm just gonna continue with the questions and work my way through the list. So if you're asking questions, I will get to them in a bit. Kevin Miller, have you tried the overloud rig player? It sounds incredibly close to the Kemper. I have, and I've also done some official demos for the Slate guys for their website, I think, and I had some fun with it, and I definitely think there is potential there. I even had a Kemper once for a couple of months, but I really had a hard time dialing that in. But back then I didn't have any tube amps, or at least not many. And I think it would be the most beneficial for someone who has a lot of tube amps and who wants to, you know, put all their tube amps into the virtual world, because I bought all these packs by all these, you know, well-known Kemper producer guys, and it was really hard for me to find some profiles in there that worked for me and my guitars. I would often have like very spiky top end or very boomy low end, or they just didn't, the profiles didn't seem very balanced to me. So it just didn't work out for me. But I'm not gonna say I'll never get one again. Who knows? Maybe I'll get one. Maybe if I ever get a Kemper, I might consider doing some profile packs, because I have 33 tube amps over here. So yeah, who knows? But yeah, the rig player is cool. There's potential there, but you cannot make your own profiles. So that's a big drawback. And the guys from Chop Tones, they make most of the profiles anyway. And yeah, I mean, when I went through those profiles, you know, out of like 30 profiles, there was one that was sounding okay. So there weren't enough profiles in there for me personally that I could work with. So maybe for you that's different. Like I said, I heard a lot of potential there, but the tones just seem very locked in, you know? I mean, once the tone is very bright, for example, or very muddy or whatever, it's kind of hard to completely change that, you know? So I prefer a modeling platform that allows tweaking from a virtual model, like an XFX or a Helix or whatever. But overloud, the TH3 or THU plugin is great. Yeah. Let's see, Juan C. Hernandez. Hello, could you please go over how you record your guitar DIs? I am specifically interested in how you set your levels going into your interface. That is a great question. I'll try to answer that for you. I'll try to go over my signal chain for you guys, because that's something that I get asked a lot about. So my guitar goes into, usually goes into this little thing on the floor. It's this switcher thing. Let me see, I have one over here. This Vilton pole position thing. And I have a bunch of whammy pedals in there and some wah-wah pedals, just so that when inspiration strikes, or how you want to call it, that I can just, you know, click on one button and my whammy pedal will be active. And when I turn that off, the signal chain is just more pure. So I have that on the floor always. It might degrade the signal quality just a little bit. It might take off a little bit of top end, but I never had any problems with that. So that's why I just always keep that thing in my signal chain anyway. That is going straight into my XFX, into the front of my XFX3, and that enables me to directly record the pure DI signal from the input of the XFX, because I always record via USB. So my XFX is always hooked up via USB, and it's often my main sound card device as well, which also has some drawbacks, but that's another story that I won't get into right now, because that has to do with the XFX's USB capabilities exclusively. Okay, so we have the signal going into the XFX, and like I said, my DI signal is going straight into the USB, so I always have that right there. And then the normal signal goes into the signal chain of the XFX, and then what I usually do is make a loop, and in that loop I place my amp, and my amp goes into my Fractal Audio reactive load, my LB2 load box, and that goes into the back of my XFX, and that's where the loop ends, so to speak. And there are a couple of things that are quite important to that, because for instance, I'm using a humbuster cable. That's one of those Fractal cables from the XFX's output into the amp, because otherwise there's a little bit too much noise going on there. And also on the back of the load box, I have the ground lift switch pressed in, because if I did not do that, there would be like a high-pitched ringing, like a feedback loop going on. And sometimes I even have pedals in between the output of the XFX and the amplifier as well. And because the humbuster cable then kind of gets shortened, the humbuster cable then goes into a pedal, and that pedal goes into the amp, and that sometimes gives me more noise, you know, so that's a little bit of a drawback to my DAW. I think I was gone there for a second. I hope that wasn't a problem. I hope my answer came through. If not, let me know. Let me see, we have a lot of questions here. I was not expecting that. So thank you guys for tuning in, and thanks for asking a lot of questions. That's very cool. I'm going to scroll up to see where we were. All right, I'm back. Let's see. Nelson X1000, greetings from Den Haag. Do you have a favorite out of all the amps you used for the video? And I think he means the big 33 amps video. Um, that's a great question. I do not really have an answer. The thing is, I do not have to have a favorite because I have 33 amps, so I can choose whichever amp I want at any time. So I don't, there's no need for a favorite. I mean, but of course, for certain tones or for certain genres, of course, there are favorites. I mean, if I want to do some classic rock, the Marshall SV20H or the Miniplexi is amazing. If I want to do something a little bit more Guns N' Roses or you know, AC/DC like, the SC20H, so the Marshall JCM 800 Mini is amazing. Or something like the Orange Dual Terror. But if I want something huge and tight and ballsy, then the EVH 5153 EL84 50 watt is amazing, or an Angle. So it really depends on the guitar, it depends on the song, it depends on the genre, and just also depends on my mood. So I'm sorry, but I do not really have a favorite. So maybe if you ask the same question again, but then related to a genre or a guitar, maybe I'll be able to answer that question for you better. But thank you for asking that. Melone asks, do you have to swap power tubes often, considering the many amps you own? That would be on the rather costly side, I assume. So far, not really. I'm lucky. I don't use them a lot individually because I have so many, and I go back and forth between all the amps. So I've only exchanged power tubes in my dual rectifier. Yeah, and that was pretty easy because it's cathode biased. I'm no expert in all that technical stuff. I'm not, I'm not, I'm not, you know, I can't bias tubes yet. I'd love to learn one day. So if anything happens to an amp that has to be biased, I'll have to bring it to a store, and that's just how it is. But for now, I haven't had a lot of trouble with tubes at all, so that's really nice. So I consider myself lucky. Thanks for the question. Thomas Modecki, how to set up bass guitar to be able to play with baritone guitar 6 strings. What strings for bass? A great question. I don't have a very elaborate answer. I have 2 bass guitars over here. I have my Ibanez ATK305 5-string, and I have a Sire, oh my god, my Sire V7, I think. It's like a 5-string bass. It's like a jazz bass, an active jazz bass that I always use. And I think I have long scale strings on there, elixir strings, like 130 on the low string. Usually when I go to drop C or something, I just tune the E, so the low E down to C, and it gets a little bit loose, but it still works fine. And when it gets lower than that, so to B, I just B or lower, then I just use the low string. And sometimes with 8-string guitar stuff, I will use a capo to go up to F on the E string. So, you know, that's just what I do. A 5-string bass with a low B flat or drop A. I just, you know, tune the string down. But I'm aware that there are better ways to do such things. Thank you for the question. Let's see, there are a lot more questions. I'm going to try to get through them all. So thanks a lot, guys, for tuning in, and thank you for listening. Thank you for hanging here. Mika, I'm sorry for pronouncing your names wrong again. Misha Bloomberg, is there a difference between the EVH and PV5150? I know there is a slight difference that can be EQ'd, but is there a difference in feel between the 5150s? Yes, definitely. In my opinion, let's just say that this is a PV5150, which it's not. It's a 6505, of course, and it's made in China. Woo! And this one is an EVH, and it's made in Vietnam. Not that it really matters to me where it's made, but just, you know, so that you guys know. To me, they are very different beasts, very different. Let's start with the clean tones. The clean tones on the EVHs are very, very clean, so they have a lot of headroom. I prefer clean channels usually that have a little bit of breakup on them, because then they, you know, compress nicely. I don't like it when the transients of your pick attack are really, you know, present and uncompressed. It sounds great if you like very, very clean tones. I mean, it's very pure in that regard. But the clean channel on the PV is, it's easier to get that to break up just a little bit, which I like, but it's a bit more honky on this one, so it's a bit more low mid focused. You know, there's more information in the 400 hertz, 1500, or sorry, 400 or 500 hertz area. So I think that for clean tones, I would prefer the PV, and the EVH is great as well, but it's just a little bit too sterile for my personal taste. The crunch tones on the PV are pretty nice. When you set the rhythm channel to crunch, I think you can get some great crunch tones on here. Very saturated and fat. But the same goes for the EVH, although the blue channel, the much hated blue channel on the EL34 version, is also kind of fluffy and saturated and fat as well, which is very nice, but it's hard to describe. I think this one has a bit more mid-range push going on there. So a little bit more bark, you know? Then like the red channels, the heavy channels, this one also has, yeah, a more solid low mid-range, a more solid bark, so to speak. This one is just a little bit more scooped, so it has really tight and fat chugs, especially when you turn up the depth on the back. You know, it gets really huge, but still kind of tight and gnarly, so it's really modern sounding. I think this one sounds a little bit less modern. You know, it sounds like a 6505, like a 5150. You know, the sound that we all know, the sound that a lot of us love and like. And this one, it has a little bit of a different flavor. Like I said, probably a bit more scooped and a bit more sort of modern voiced, a bit more genty. A lot of people like to use tube screamers with the PVs to tighten it up, to make it sound even more tight, and I think that the EVHs need a lot less of that to make it sound tight, so I hope that helps. Thanks for asking that question. On to the next question. Jeff Dean, what's your favorite on the orange amps? I really like the TH30 these days. Oh my god, Jeff, what a great question. Thanks for asking. I'm a huge orange fan. You guys know that. You guys know that by now. It's hard to pick a favorite. I think obviously my favorite orange is the Rockerverb 50 Mark III. It's just an amazing amp. But it's great for clean tones and for the heavy tones, but it's not the very best amp for crunch tones. So for those types of tones, the Dual Terror is also one of my favorites. The Dual Terror by Orange is really hard to beat. It's a great amp for, you know, everything from low gain to high gain. It's not the very best amp for metal, unless you put a boost in front, but it's amazing for anything other than metal. So I guess you could say that the Rockerverb 50 and the Dual Terror could be my favorites, but I also really love the other ones. The TH30 that you mentioned is also really nice. And the OR15, the Jim Root, the Tiny Terror is legendary, of course. So they're all amazing. But if I had to pick one or two favorites, it would be the Rockerverb 50 Mark III and the Dual Terror. Yes. Alchemy Audio, thank you so much for your super chat. I really, really appreciate it. It's really, you know, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Hey John, long-time fan. I'm curious why you record guitars and bass in stereo. What are the advantages, if any? Thanks. Thank you for asking that question. In fact, I had that noted in my notebook, which I won't be needing for this Q&A because there are a lot of questions coming in already. I don't have a really good answer for you. One day, or like sometime way in the past, when I started recording guitars, for some reason I started recording in stereo, and I think it was because I was using modulars like the old Pod XT Live and stuff, and I wanted to be able to have stereo effects. And back then I did not record DI signals just yet. And I think for some reason I just kept recording in stereo, and there was times when I tried mono, but then I usually noticed that I had problems in Cubase with stereo effects and all that. So I went back to stereo every time, and I just kept it that way. And that's the most simple answer. It just works for me, and it's very easy to process everything in stereo. I don't have to route any channels to stereo buses in order to get stereo effects. So I'm sorry that I don't have a really good answer for you. It's just the way that I always do it. I'm sure that if I recorded in mono now, it would work out just fine. But perhaps I'm just a little bit lazy in that regard. It just works for me. And it's just easy for me to just keep doing it that way. even though I'm aware that it takes up more space on my computer. So maybe it's something that I should think about more. So thanks again for that question and for the super chat. I really appreciate that, Alchemy Audio. Right, I'm gonna scroll back up to some more questions. A lot of questions here, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, dudes. Really, really appreciate it. Wow, that's a lot of questions. Let's see, where were we? Okay, I'm almost there. Seth asks, hey John, I currently have a Helix LT, but looking to dive into the fractal world with the FM3. It seems you use mostly the Helix stuff in your videos. Do you think it would be worth the jump being? Well, that's a good question, Seth. I don't know. I mean, it all depends on what you need. I think they both sound great. Personally, I lean more towards the Helix because I just really like how it sounds, how it works, and also how the effects sound and work, and the uniqueness and quirkiness of the effects as well. But the fractal stuff is amazing as well, but I would recommend really just looking at the features and looking at what you need. You know, do you need the really in-depth tweakability that the fractal stuff has? Or do you like things to be a little bit more easy and intuitive? And can you live with the fact that the Helix has slightly less amp models, for example? Or do you want, the full amp model range that the fractal stuff has to offer? The advantage of the Helix LT is, of course, that you have more foot switch capability right away, and that it's more affordable. So if one breaks down, it won't cost you a kidney to buy a new one. So it's a hard question to answer. Both are amazing. Look at what you need. Yeah, personally, I would just go with the Line 6 stuff because that's just what I really enjoy working with. But yeah, I'm sorry that I don't have a really good answer for you because it's really personal to what you need. Thomas, I mean 4-string bass. Okay, so you mean 4 strings for the baritone stuff. In that case, what I would do if you're playing along with baritone guitars and you want a bass, proper bass, make sure you get a long scale bass guitar and put some thick strings on there. Buy a 5-string bass set and put them on there and tune it to B flat. There you go. Then you should have a great tone for your baritone guitars. All right, we're going on to the next question. I'm not skipping any questions here, so it could be a quite long chat, but I'm here. I'm up for it. If I fall asleep, I will let you know. Devin Blair asks, if you could only ever own one amp setup, what would it be? I want a new amp setup, and I want to see the direction I could go in. Wow. If I could ever own one amp setup. Well, if I could only own one amp, I would probably go with a modular like the Helix and a good power amp or something. Because I would want more flavors, I mean, obviously, I have all these amps here because I like to have more flavors at my disposal. Sometimes I want a Mesa Boogie sound. Sometimes I want an old school Marshall sound with a lot of bark. Sometimes I want something really tight, aggressive, and gnarly. Then I go for an angle. So going with one amplifier alone would be quite hard for me. So it's a hard question to answer. I would have to think about that. Here's a name that I cannot pronounce. Hello from Russia. Do you use quad tracks or more for rhythm guitars? How do you choose a combination of amps and IR? Thank you for your question and thanks for tuning in. I never quad track. I used to do that in the past because, I don't know why, but because it would sound bigger. But I never found that it made the guitars bigger. I usually found that it makes the guitars less defined. So if you put 2 guitars on top of each other on one side, for example, like quad tracking does, you can put 2 guitars on the right side and 2 guitars on the left side. It makes them less defined. It makes them a little bit more muddy. So yeah, I'm just not a fan of quad tracking for that reason. What I usually do is 1 guitar on the left and 1 guitar on the right, and in my opinion, that's definitely huge enough. Thanks for the question. David Perez, will you do a video on how to properly make an impulse response? No. At least Not for now, because as I told you guys earlier, but I'm sure that other people are tuned in right now, but I'm not the one in Ownhammer who creates the impulse responses. That's my buddy Kevin. Kevin is the genius behind Ownhammer. He's the guy that creates all the IRs, and he does this in his own way, and I don't think it would be good for him to ever tell you people how to do that, because he has his own unique way of doing it, and it sounds amazing. So I don't know. I don't think that I would ever need to do that because he's so good at it. But maybe I'll buy an SM57 one day and have some fun and try it for myself. But for now, no. Nick Hill, buddy, thank you so much for your super chat. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for tuning in as well. Nick says, just want to say thanks for all the help you provided me over the years. Love you. Love you too, man. Thank you so much for that super chat and for tuning in. I really appreciate it. It's exciting, this live chat thing, man. It's a little bit daunting. It makes me a little bit nervous because usually I edit my videos down if I pronounce something in a bad way, because I'm a little bit insecure sometimes about my English, because I'm half Dutch and half English, and and when I get in front of a camera, usually I get pretty nervous, and it gets hard for me to place my sentences correctly. But I think it's going well right now, so I'm really enjoying it. So thank you very much, Nick. Thank you. All right, I'm going to scroll back up to some more questions that I have not answered. So we're just having a lot of fun here. All right. Have you, Washa Conte, Washa, cool name. Have you ever tried a Carvin X100B Series 4 or any series? No, I have never tried a Carvin. I would love to try a Carvin one day, but no, I haven't tried anything by Carvin, so I do not have an opinion on that. The one thing that comes to mind immediately, of course, is Steve Vai. I love Steve Vai, I love his tone, but I don't think that if I would buy a Carvin amp that I would sound like that, so I don't know. I mean, I've heard good things about Carvin, of course. They're a very well-known brand, but I've never played one, so I can't really say anything about it, but who knows? I would love to try one. Let's see. So many questions. Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. All right. Hi, Juan Bazara asks, hi, I've got a DSL 20 with a Harley Benton 4x12 with 330, and I feel its distorted channel is so fizzy. How could I solve this without sacrifice all the treble of the amp? Well, the DSL-20 is a bright amp. It has a lot of gain and it has a lot of cut. It sounds kind of like a saw, which is really nice about the amp, actually. When you put that amplifier into a mix, it immediately cuts through, so that's nice. But when I play with my load box, I'm able to crank it up quite a lot. So when you crank a tube amp with EL34s or any other power tube, when you crank it up, the tone gets a bit darker and more mid-focused. And maybe you're not able to turn it up loud enough. So maybe you should try something like an attenuator, or you could even try an equalizer in the loop. And that could help solve your problems. But maybe the Harley Benton is also just bright, because those V30s are Chinese made, and I think they are 16 ohm V30s. Those tend to be pretty bright as well. You could also try some darker speakers, like Eminence speakers or something, and experiment with that. And maybe try that amp through another cab in a store or a cab from a friend, and see if that changes the sound. And then you can kind of narrow it down to see where the problem of your brightness with that amp comes from. Yeah, so it's not easy for me to answer that question perfectly, because I don't know what the origin is of that problem. But in my case, what obviously helps for me is just using my load box and being able to crank my amp so that the power tubes start to compress, and then choose an IR with a proper darkness or brightness. So I never have those problems really, because I have a really flexible setup. And Juan also says, love your channel. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Then Sebastian Cordero says, Juan, same, but I have the 2x12. So yeah, same answer for you. Perhaps try an equalizer in the loop. an equalizer pedal and just remove some top end. Or try cranking it, you know, or try a load box with impulse responses like I do, or try a different speaker or a different cabinet. Can we get 8-string through the Marshall Dsl? Maybe. Maybe that will happen someday. Maybe I'll do a video with 8-string guitars through a lot of amps. That would be fun, wouldn't it? Like one 8-string guitar, 10 amps or something, to see how well an 8-string guitar sound through all those amps. That's a pretty good idea, actually. So I might do that one day. Thanks for the suggestion, Day Gunson. Eric Gomez, what's your favorite lunchbox amp? Well, I kind of answered this question already before. It's really hard for me to answer that, and I don't think I can answer that because I love all my amps, and for different reasons. I mean, for example, if I want that really nice vintage orange tone with a lot of bite and bark, I like my Tiny Terror. If I want a more modern sounding rock amp, then I'll pick my PRS MT15, for example. So it's really hard, or basically impossible, to pick a favorite. Nathaniel Garland asks, have you ever played the Mesa Stiletto series? I did answer that question earlier in the chat, so I won't answer that again, but feel free to look back when the video is not live anymore. Daigunson, what are your opinion on the Synergy modular stuff? I don't really have an opinion on that because I've never tried it, but it sounds and looks very promising and very exciting. A couple of friends of mine have those. They have like the Friedman and the Soldano and the Fender stuff. They seem really, really nice. So yeah, maybe one day I'll try them, who knows. For now, it's not something that I'm really looking at, but I think it's a very useful system for people who want to use real tube amps, but want the flexibility of something like a modular, where you could say like, I want a Fendery clean, I want a Friedman crunch, and then I like an angle high gain sound. Well, that's absolutely possible with the Synergy stuff. So I think it's a really, really cool invention and a cool product. I would love to try it one day. For now, it's not something that is in the pipeline, but who knows? But my opinion is basically it looks very promising. I would love to try it. Jack Rex, do you accept amps from viewers to demonstrate? I haven't done that, so I'm not sure about that. I don't know. It would seem like a little bit of a hassle to send and ship and all that, but who knows? I'm not saying that I won't do it, but I don't know. It's not something that I've done before. Let's see. Most versatile, Dimitris Mavbourgiotis. Sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. Most versatile 5150/6005 variation. How do you like the EL34 version? I like that a lot. I talked about those amps before in the chat, in the video. I like them both. Which is the most versatile? That's a great question. Ooh, that's hard. That's hard. I mean, the EVH has a pretty pronounced voice because it's already very tight, you know? And when an amp already is very tight, and I mean the red channel, because the blue channel is quite loose and quite more vintage sounding. It sounds more like a Soldano, I think. But when an amp is already that tight, there isn't really a lot that you can do to sort of get rid of the tightness, if you know what I mean. And in the case of the 6505 or the PV variations, the sound is a bit rounder and a bit more, you know, fatter and less tight by default. That's why a lot of people like to use tube screamers with their PVs. So probably the PV. I'm not sure. It's a hard question to answer. It all depends on your taste. I mean, if you like your tones to always be very tight and articulate, then perhaps the EVH is perfect for you. But if you want a little bit more flexibility, so, you know, have a bit more tones that are a bit more low-mid focused and a bit looser, like a tiny bit looser, then the PV might do it for you. I do love the EL34 EVH a lot. I know that a lot of people do not like the blue channel on that one, but I think for me, especially since I'm more of a studio player, I think that the EVH, the blue channel is great because it adds a different flavor, you know? The red channel has that really tight and aggressive flavor, and the blue channel offers me something a little bit more in between. So I really dig that amp a lot. Let's see. Circle of Tone. Hey man, love your channel, dude. Thanks for tuning in. Do you recommend a reamp box? I'm thinking of starting that service. Great idea. I think you would do great because you get some amazing tones on your channel. Thank you for tuning in. I don't have any recommendations because I always use my Fractal X effects for the DIs, and of course my Helix as well when I'm recording through that. I do not have a reamp box. So my setup is really basic on that regard. I explained my whole setup earlier in the video, and that's basically how I always do it, and it's really flexible and easy to work with for me. So that's my answer on that. Thanks again for asking that question, and thanks for tuning in. Let's see. One song for the Brent Heinz Terror, please. I wasn't expecting that to be requested. The Brent Heinz is an interesting amp because it's not made anymore. They discontinued it, and it's probably the least orange-sounding orange amp that I ever tried. It sounds like an angry, pissed-off vintage Marshall or something. So it's a very interesting amp, and I think because of that reason, a lot of people really like it or hate it because it has a really pronounced, aggressive sound. But sure, I'll keep that in mind. The one song video, yes. Thank you for that question, Red End 10 Fire. Let's move on. What's your favorite amp? I answered that question. I tried to answer that. What's your favorite orange amp? I answered that question before. Did you ever try the Micro Dark? Kolesnikov Oleg asks, did you ever try the Micro Dark? I haven't tried the Micro Orange amps, no. I would love to try them. They seem like great amps. Very tiny, 20 watts, I believe. Only one tube. I haven't ever tried a solid state amp into my load box though, and I don't think that those little orange amps have a proper line out. So I would have to figure out some sort of setup for those, but I would love to try one of those, especially the micro, the tiny, in the Micro Terror, like the white one, because I wasn't a fan of the Dark Terror. It was a bit too scoop sounding for me. So the Micro Dark, I don't know, I would have to try it. Thanks for the question. Let's see. Hi there. Let's see. You guys are having your own discussions in the chat, which is cool. Thank you for participating, guys. Daigunsen asks, would you use a Captor X or similar for recording? I think so. I mean, I haven't tried a Captor myself, but they seem to be great devices for getting your tube amp tones straight into your DAW. So yeah, they would probably work well for recording, and I've heard great things about them as well. I think that Leon Todd has a video where he compares the Fractal LB2 reactive load, which I have, to a Captor. And I think in that case, the Captor sounds a little bit more scooped. So you'd have to try to find a comparison between, you know, a Captor and another load box. Maybe find a comparison between a Captor and the Sur reactive load to see the tonal difference and to see if the sound of the Captor works for you, because all the load box devices seem to have a different tone to them. Let's see. Seth Filippo asks, do you ever run your tube amps through real cabs with mics, or is it always load box and IRs? I think a comparison between the two would be cool. That could be cool indeed. Thank you for your question, Seth, and thank you for tuning in. I hardly ever use my real cabinets, actually. I have 3 cabs here. I have an Engel 2x12 with English V30s here. I have an Orange PPC 212 with English V30s as well. And I have an EVH 2x12 here. Sometimes I plug into them for fun, you know, just to have the in-the-room feel. But most of the time, I just go into my load box because that's just a very convenient way for me to use my amps, and it allows me to really shape the tone of my guitar amp as well. So, you know, if I think that my amp sounds a little bit too bright, I'll just choose an IR that's a little bit darker. Or, you know, if I want a different sort of cab sound, I'll get another cab. That flexibility really works for me. So yeah, I think it's fairly obvious from my videos that that setup is just amazing for me. In the past, I have worked with miking real cabs and all that, and of course you can get great results. I mean, that is the way that it has always been done before impulse responses. But yeah, in my case, it's just the way that I prefer to do things with impulse responses and a load box, and I highly recommend it to anyone. Thanks for the question, man. Thank you. Pineapple Guy Lou Hendrickson. I love your YouTube names, guys. You guys are always creative. I have a Sir Badger. What overdrive is best classic rock to hard rock? Well, I'm not an overdrive expert, but if you want like a pedal that does a whole preamp sound or amp sound in one, then you could look at something like the Friedman BEOD Deluxe, which is great for making a clean amplifier sound like a high gain BE amp. If you want an overdrive that pushes your amp more, maybe look at something like a Tube Screamer, or like the Laney Steel Park that I've been using a lot. That's a really cool pedal as well. It's a sort of a Tube Screamer, but a little bit more flexible with a couple of different voicings and a bass and a treble knob. Maybe look into something like that, but it kind of depends on what you want to do with your pedal. More questions. Greg Kioso asks, hi mates, greetings from Greece. What is your opinion about Atomic Amplifier Products 3612 or Amplifier Box? Have you tried it? I have not. I would love to. I've heard great things about those. I think they sound cool because I've heard some great demos, and I've tried that Studio Devil plugin. And I think the Studio Devil guy is the one who makes the amp algorithms for the amplifier stuff, and he's quite good, so I would expect those to sound quite nice if you pair them with some great IRs. But I have not tried them. Thanks for the question, Greg. I hope to see you back on the channel. ZZ, you're a legend, mate. Love your work. Thank you so much, and thanks for tuning in. All right. Danny Misleading. Do you cut some high frequency when you use the Ownhammer IR? I found I need to cut the frequencies over 12K. No, I never. I almost never do that. I just choose an IR that works for the amp. And I usually do cut some low end under like 80 Hertz just to make some room for the bass guitar and the kick drum. But I hardly ever take out any top end. If I find that my IRs or amp is too fizzy or too bright, I just choose another IR, or I just dial down the presence and treble on the amp. So I tend to keep things very simple when dialing stuff in. I try to avoid EQ as much as possible. That's one of my rules. Thanks for the question, Danny. Slianidrak. I'm sorry, Slianidrak. I probably did not pronounce that correctly. I'm very sorry. Have you tried the Nembrini Cali Dual Amp Sim? I think is a really convincing rectifier sim. I did briefly try it, and I think that those plugins look really nice, but there is something about those plugins that just seems a little bit off to me personally. They often are a little bit really honky in the mid, so there is a bit too much mid-range going on in the 500 Hertz area. I don't know, they were a little bit hard for me to dial in, and like I said just now, I like to avoid EQ as much as possible, so when I'm using an amp simulator, and then when I start to notice that I need to use some EQ to make it sound good, I usually think, you know, I'd rather use something that does not need any EQ. That's just how I like to work. But I mean, it could be a great plugin. I tried it briefly, and it just wasn't great for me personally. But yeah, I mean, if it works for you, good for you, man. Thanks for the question. Let's see. Rockabilly 12, have you had any issues with the 5150? No, I have not. Thanks for asking. Peroquinares. I'm so sorry. Peroquinares. Sup, Jan? Love your videos. Keep it up. Thanks, man. That fireball. Yeah, that fireball is awesome. Andre Poli. Have you ever played a new 6505 that was built in China? Yes, mine is built in China, and it's an amazing amp. It works just fine. It sounds huge. Are there ever any differences in sound? I doubt it. I doubt it. That's my answer. I haven't done a direct comparison, so I am not able to give you a proper answer on that one. But I think my Chinese PV sounds just fine. What would you use for a Chevelle rock tone? Christian Chaffee asks. Think Venacera album. Well, I haven't listened to them enough to give you a proper answer. My initial thought would be a rectifier, but I could be totally wrong. I would have to listen to them more. They seem like a really cool band, though. They're definitely on my list of bands that I need to check out more. David Maxim, thank you so much for giving me your compliment. Best amp reviewer channel at the moment. Thank you so much. Thanks, guys, for tuning in, by the way. I really appreciate it. It's fun, man. It's fun. I'm having fun here. I hope you're having fun, too. I hope this is not too boring. Seth Filippo asks, are you involved in making the IRs with Kevin? No, I am not. I do give my feedback, my beta feedback, so to speak, but he is the mastermind between the actual IRs. What does the process of making a cab pack look like? Well, I can't really tell you because I don't really know, because he's the one doing that all by himself. But I can tell you that it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to get these IRs to sound so good. So it's really a craft, and Kevin has done an amazing job of honing that craft and perfecting that craft. He's an absolute monster. He's the best. Thanks for the question. All right. I'm just going to carry on here. Antonio Carvalho. I play the keyboard and I often feel the frequencies conflicting with the band's guitar. Would you indicate that I work with the frequency of the guitar or keyboard? Would you indicate? That's a difficult question. It all depends on the guitar tone and the keyboard tone. Well, it depends on how the frequencies are, you know. What you could try to do is mess with an equalizer on your synthesizer. And also, well, before we go any further, what sort of situation are you in? Is it in the studio when you hear the instruments through your monitors, or is it in the rehearsal space, or is it on stage? Because it really depends on your situation. If it's on stage and in the rehearsal room, just make sure that the guitar player doesn't have a frequency spectrum that is too wide, with a lot of top end, a lot of bottom end. Maybe ask him to sort of make the frequency range of his guitar a bit more narrow. You know, take off some top end here and take off some low end just to make some room for the keyboards. And maybe boost some mids on the keyboards. You know, maybe try a simple equalizer to sort of find a frequency area in the mids where you can boost a little bit of the frequencies where your keyboard starts to kind of stand out in the mix more. Maybe that's something to try out. Or maybe try something like saturation, like a tube drive, or like a, you know, like a distortion pedal subtly on your keyboards. That might help as well, because distortion or tube saturation can really help to make your synthesizer stand out in the mix. Thanks for your comments, guys. Some guy asks, have you ever played the JP2C? I have not, and I would love to try one. I would love to try one. In fact, I've watched the new Dream Theater Blu-ray a couple days ago, and I've listened to the new John Petrucci album a couple days ago as well, and I really enjoyed that. And the guitar tones on that were just absolutely huge. And I think John Petrucci has now found his tone. I mean, it really seems to work well for him. So thick and barky with, I mean, he scoops his tone, but there are still mids left in there, chunky mids. So they seem like great amps, but they're very expensive. So I don't see myself buying one of those anytime soon. Thanks for the question. Victor Olson, how can you afford all those great amps you have? Wouldn't you like to know? Well, the thing is, you just gotta work and have priorities. I mean, I don't go out drinking, for example. I don't have a car. I don't drive a car, so I don't have to pay car insurance and pay for gas and all that stuff. A lot of stuff that I do in my free time is just work on music and play guitar, and so that's where a lot of my attention goes as well. So naturally, that's where a lot of my free money goes as well. So But I have some used amps as well. That helps, buying used stuff. And a lot of my amps are quite affordable, actually. So some of them are a bit more expensive, but most of them are quite affordable when you compare them to other amps. So just, it's all about priorities, man. But thanks for the question. Let's see, Grist666. He's asking this question in Dutch, but I'll translate it. I would love to have a dual terror, but I really miss an effects loop. Well, I can kind of understand. I never use effects loops myself. I really never use effects loops, but I can definitely see why they are useful. What you could do, but this is a very expensive option, is buy a Boss Tube amp expander and run it through there. And then you have an FX loop and a 100-watt solid state amp, I think, where you can, turn up the level of the dual terror even more. So that would, in fact, be a really good solution. I mean, I would love to have a Boss Tube expander as well, but right now the Fractal load box works fine for me. But that's something that I would recommend in such a situation, even though it's not an easy or an affordable option. But when you have one of those, a Boss Tube amp expander, you could do all sorts of crazy stuff. So that would be one option. Let's see. Let's see, more questions. Goudvis, obviously a Dutch or Belgian YouTuber. Goudvis56667. PRS MT15 versus Angle Fireball 25 video soon. Probably. That's something that I want to do. I have a lot of stuff that I want to do. One of the things that I want to do is make like a comparison video between 4 big amps. So I want to compare my dual rectifier to my 6505, to my Marshall JVM, to my Orange Rock-Reverb soon. So that's something that I'm going to work on very soon with clean, crunch, rock, and metal tones. So it's going to be quite a long video, but very in-depth, so to speak. But the MT15 versus Angle Fireball is definitely something that I would want to work on. So thanks for the suggestion. Goudvis, thank you. Sorry for my voice. My voice is a little bit crackly because I've had a cold for the past week, so I hope you guys can all understand what I'm saying here. K3X, are you on Twitter? I am not really on Twitter, no. Should I be? That's the question. Should I be on Twitter? Jordan Jenkins, hey, what's your best game you played? Plus, mine is Mario Maker 2. Good question. I don't know. I like video games. I like. I'm currently playing the new Spider-Man game on the PlayStation 4, the Miles Morales game, which is a lot of fun. But I don't really have any like really favorites. I don't know how to pronounce this name. III. Thanks for your question, by the way. Dude, big fan of the channel. Will you be reviewing Amplitube 5? The sounds on there, I hope, are better. I did answer this question sort of earlier in the video, but I would love to review Amplitube 5. In fact, I did contact IK Multimedia if they would provide me a copy to review. I didn't get an answer just yet, so we'll see. We'll see. It's quite expensive, so I don't know if I would want to buy it. So it's expensive for something that might not sound very good. I'll try the free version first and see how that sounds and see from there. But I would love to try it, yes. Let's see. At the Source Studios says, haha, impulse responses will be the death of me. I tried a couple times recently with the white noise and I literally wasted an entire day. With white noise! Wow, I'm not sure what you mean by that. I hope you did not put some white noise through the impulse responses to see how that would sound. Look. Let's clear something up about impulse responses, and especially the Ownhammer impulse response packs. Sometimes I read people saying that, oh, the Ownhammer impulse response packs have so many options and it's too hard for me to find a solution. It's very easy to start when you start with the summary folders, which are like really like a best-of folder with a tiny amount of files for each speaker option in each cabinet. Look in there to find a speaker combo that works for you. If you're happy with that, stick with that and don't do anything else. If you think like, well, that sounds cool, but I need a little bit more top end, or I need a little bit more of this or that. Then go into the quick start folder and look for files that work for you there. And if you want to go even deeper, then you can go to the mixes and mics folders. But just start with the simple stuff, and you should not have to feel the need to try every single impulse response. Those files are there for anyone who would want to use them. For instance, with the MMC packs, there are a lot of mics and a lot of mixes in there. And I can understand why you would get lost if you were to try all the files, but those files are there just for people who want to hear a mic that they're familiar with that cabinet, you know? So just stick with the simple summary or quick start files, and it should be very easy. Hey guys, thanks for all your comments, by the way, guys. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Buckman says, thanks, John, for IR's own hammer workhorse. They are all great. Thank you. I'm glad you're enjoying those. Let's see. At the Source Studios asked me about the Mesa Badlander. Well, I did mention that earlier. Someone asked me about that. It seems like a great amp. Would love to try one. Let's see. RD Ray. Hi, John. Really like your vids. If not already asked, do you prefer specific tube types for power amp? No, I don't. I mean, I have with EL34s. I have amps with 6L6s. I have a lot of amps with EL84s. And they all sound great to me. So, yeah, it's really, I haven't really compared various power tube types in one amp. That would be the ultimate test, wouldn't it be? But I haven't tried that myself, so I can't really give you an opinion on that. Sorry, but thank you for asking the question. Let's see. I think we've got a spammer. The Jordan Jenkins keeps asking me the same question. All right. Ashray Shiva asks, hey John, which one of the modern amp sims is your favorite? Comparing the STL versus Neurals versus ML Sound Labs. Something about the breakup and string clarity that the Neural has that the others just don't do for me. Well, I sort of answered this question earlier already. I said that I really like Helix Native myself. To me, that's the best one. It sounds the most natural. I haven't tried the STL stuff. I've only tried one or two of the Neurals, and they were cool for a certain sound, but to me they were a little bit limiting. I know it's not a popular opinion to have. I know a lot of people are very fond of those plugins, and of course, whatever works for you. But for me, I just like to stick with Helix Native for the most part. So I'm not the best person to answer that for you. I'm sorry. I would love to try the STL stuff though. I would love to try that one day. I did contact them once, but nothing happened. So let's see. Thanks for that question, by the way. And again, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. At the beginning of this video, I mentioned that I was going to release a video today, the big amp comparison with 33 amplifiers in one, the big 6.5 hour video with the time codes, with all my amps in it, clean, crunch, rock, lead, metal, and everything. But since it was 6.5 hours long, it was really hard for me to find errors, and I kept finding errors, and I had to re-render and re-upload that video a couple times already, which takes about 4 to 5 days in total. So I had to redo the entire video, and it's rendering now. It should be done rendering tomorrow, and then I can upload it hopefully tomorrow, and then that will take about 3 days. So I'm going to release that video in about 4 days. I hope you guys check it out, and I hope you guys will enjoy it and get something out of it. I worked on it for a month. It was a lot of work. It was insane. So just wanted to mention that to you guys, and that's one of the reasons why I decided to do a little live stream here. So thank you all for tuning in. Thanks for hanging out, and thanks for your questions as well. Let's see, we've got more questions. Andres Medina, I was wondering if you do tones. If someone sends you a clean guitar track, a DI, would create a preset for a fractal XFX. Right now I'm thinking a James Hetfield clean guitar, the day that never comes. I guess I could do something like that. If you want me to do anything like that, or do a reamp or something, just send me a message via the Facebook, my Sonic Drive Studio Facebook page, and I'm sure we could work something out. Thanks for the question. Just to attach to that question, someone asked me earlier if I do more production work. Yes, I do. I do mixing, I do reamping, I do drum programming, and all that stuff. So if you ever need me to mix your music, or to program drums, or to reamp your guitars, or anything like that, just let me know, send me a message, and we'll work something out. Mr. Deo Jones asks, what is the best IR loader / load box in your opinion? I have a torpedo captor with own hammer IRs and it sounds really muddy. That's interesting. That's not, I mean, muddy does not match my experience at all, so I wonder what's happening there. I don't know what amps you're using. I don't know the settings. Maybe you're cranking your tube amp up way too loud. I do remember when I started this tube amp thing, I had another load box. I had the Jet Attenuator by Jet City for a short while, and the tones that I got out of that thing also were quite muddy. And then when I got the Fractal Audio LB2 reactive load, and suddenly all my tones opened up. So it might have to do with the torpedo, but it's really hard to say. I can tell you that the own hammer IRs definitely are not muddy. As I said earlier in this chat, I almost never use EQ on my guitars. So all the guitar tones on my channel are pretty pure, and I don't think those tones are muddy. So I don't know. It's hard to say. It's hard to say where the problem lies. Good luck with that, and thanks for the question. Billy Papenberg. Well, Papenberg, it sounds like a Dutch name. What are your thoughts about the Hughes and Kettner Grandmeister 40? Does it have enough built-in overdrive for metal? Thanks for the question, Billy. Absolutely, it's a very versatile amp. It has a really great cut. It's not the most tight metal sound that there is right now. I mean, for example, the Angle over here, or the EVH, sounds a bit tighter attack and response. The Grandmeister is a little bit more saggy and fat in the low end, which is something that I like. I mean, it's not a problem for me. It also depends on your pickups. I used to have a guitar or two with the Seymour Duncan, the Sentient and the Nazgul. Those pickups are very bitey and aggressive, for example. When you put those through that amp, it's plenty tight. But if you use something with a bit more fatter sounding pickup, then it will sound a bit more tubby and a bit more fluffy in the low end. So, yeah. It depends on your guitar, but I think it's a great amp for metal indeed, yes. But maybe you'll have to use a pre-EQ or some sort of boost in front to make it a bit more tight. Let's see. More questions. Felipe Chavez, what is the most underrated guitar amp in your opinion? The most underrated guitar amp ever in history? I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, that's a hard question to answer, but maybe sometimes certain aspects of amps are underrated. For example, the blue channel of my EVH 5150 50 watt EL34 is a bit underrated. People hate that because it's not tight and aggressive enough. Everything has to be so tight and aggressive these days. But I kind of like that sort of big, organic, tubey sound. You know, sometimes people hate amps because they're built in China or whatever, so that makes amps underrated sometimes. So it's a hard question to answer. Sorry for the non-perfect answer. But thanks for asking your question. Nice to see you streaming, Pim Jacobs. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in. Yes. Pim Jacobs, I have one question. Are you playing in a band currently? No, I am not. Not really. I have some friends out there. Some of them might be watching right now, and you know who you are, that I really want to make some music with. But it's just, COVID isn't making that very easy. And a couple of those guys are living on the other side of the planet. So that's an issue. So for now, my musical outlet all goes through my channel. So if you want to hear my music, just tune into my channel, and everything that I make basically ends up on the channel. Thanks for the question. Let's see. What's the best song you heard? This Jordan Jenkins is an interesting person. The best song I ever heard is Carpe Diem Baby by Metallica. It's one of the best songs I've ever heard. Let's see. Max Static asks, what neck profile do you prefer? You have a lot of guitars with very different profiles. Fender versus a flat Ibanez. Do you have a favorite, or is it just different things for different songs? Yeah, I don't have favorites. I like all my guitars. I tend to really enjoy the ESP necks. So, for example, the neck on this beautiful Iron Cross. It's a really nice neck shape. I do tend to like those a lot. I had a bit more guitars like a couple of years ago with super thin necks, like the Schecter KM6 and an Ibanez RG652 or something. Those were really skinny. I think I prefer necks that are slightly bigger than that, but I don't really have a preference. Thanks for the question. Mr. Shitfire 420. Get some Fortin amps, man, if you can. I would love to try one day, but for now it's not really an option, but who knows? Thanks for the question, or suggestion, I should say. Casper Davide. Ever tried a Bogner Atma? ATMA. Would like to hear your experiences. No, I have not. I haven't even heard of those, so maybe I should look at those. Thanks for the question. Let's see. Aiden Jones asks, I was thinking of getting an MT15, a Boogie Mark 525, or a Boogie Mini Rectifier. I want to play some Red Hot Chili Peppers, Periphery, Metallica, Dream Theater, and Avenged Sevenfold. Which amp do you think is best? Ooh, that's tough. That's a tough question. The thing is, the MT15 is great. Everybody knows that the MT15 is great. But to me, one thing that's lacking about that amp is that it doesn't really have a nice classic rock crunch. I mean, it does the really cleans well, and it does the high gain stuff well, but it doesn't really do crunch very well. So maybe write that one off. And then we have the Boogie Mark 525 left and the Mini Rectifier, and then it really starts to depend on what kind of tone you want. Do you want a really tight and articulate sound with a lot of tweaking options? Then perhaps the Mark V would be good for you. Do you like a more raw and scoop sound? Then the Mini Rectifier could be good for you. But for Red Hot Chili Peppers, I guess the clean channel on the Mini Rectifier could be great for that, but maybe you should look at a Marshall for that. Periphery, Metallica, Dream Theater, you know, for those bands, the Mark V probably is the best. And when you say Metallica and Dream Theater, it really depends on the era. I mean, if you like the modern Metallica sound, probably the Mini Rectifier could be best. For Dream Theater, if you like the Train of Thought sound, you know, that era, perhaps also look at the Mini Rectifier. But if you like the modern Dream Theater sound or the more old school Dream Theater sound, perhaps the Mark would be better. So it's a hard question to answer. Get both. That's what I did. Thanks for the question, Aiden. Thank you so much. Let's see. Let's see. A lot more questions, guys. I'm going to try to get through them all. Eventually, I'll have to go to bed and sleep, of course, but let's see how long we can do this together. Thanks again for tuning in, and thanks for hanging out with me. I really appreciate it, and I hope you're having some fun. Hope you're enjoying this. If this is something that you enjoy, then I will do it more often. So thanks, guys. Thank you a lot. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you for your comments, guys. Let's see if I can get some more questions over here. At the Source Studios again, I think you just said you don't do any EQ on your tones for your feeds, right? Just straight raw impulse? Yes, yes. Like I said, sometimes I do low cuts, so sometimes I cut around 80 Hertz just to make room for the bass guitar and the kick drum. But I do not like to do any subtraction or boosting. Usually I really avoid that stuff. If I think that my guitar needs another tone, I either choose another impulse response or I just tweak the amp, you know, tweak the treble, tweak the bass until that all sounds right. I really like to keep things as basic as simple, because as soon as you start using EQ on guitars, in my personal opinion, it really starts to sound unnatural quite fast. So the less you do, the more natural it sounds. And because the EQ on an amplifier usually kind of works in a very musical way. You know, if you boost the treble on an amplifier, it usually sounds musical and nice. And when you do that with an equalizer, depending on the type of equalizer, of course, it can start to sound a little bit unnatural, in my experience and my opinion. But that's just my personal opinion. So I think you can absolutely get away with avoiding EQ on your guitar tones altogether if you just make sure that you use a good guitar, and you play your guitar parts nicely, you dial in your amp nicely, you use a good load box and some proper impulse responses, then you should not need to use any EQ at all. So I hope that helps to answer your question. Thanks. Deceatless Band, hey guys, what's up? Greetings, man. Have you ever worked with Bugera amps? I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but I think it's Bugera. I haven't tried one. They seem intriguing, but at the same time, I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about that brand, but I wouldn't mind trying one. Should be fun, but I have never tried one in the past. Marty V or Marty 5. How about the Hook or Koch amps or any other Dutch builds? Well, to start off, the answer for that question, I would love to try any Dutch or Belgian or German amp brand. I would love to. My old band that I played in, Entwined, that was a Dutch band. For a couple of years, I even played the Koch Powertone 2, I think. That was a nice amp. It's a long time ago, so I don't really have a good recollection of how those amps sounded. But I think that they sounded great. I would love to try one again. So yeah, sure. Thanks for the question, Marty. Let's see, more questions. There are a lot more questions, guys, so I'm gonna look for more questions to answer. Thank you for your channel. Thank you so much for your comments. Let's see. Can you, Luis Vasquez reminds me of the Alien movies. Aliens, that was a great movie, and Vasquez is a cool character in that movie. Can you talk a bit about how you choose an amp for a specific song, for specific songs? Well, I don't have like a pre-written method for that or anything. If I write something that is a bit more classic rocky, for example, I will quickly go either for a Marshall, like the SC28, the Marshall JCM 800 Studio, or the Mini Plexi, or something like the Orange Rocker 15 or Dual Terror. Or if I want something really big and scooped, that reminds me of something like, you know, some new metal band or something like Nickelback, then I would go for something like a rectifier. So it really, there's no rule. It's a kind of, just follow my gut or my feelings on that. So I don't have like a specific method. Thanks for the question. Hi, Lewis. Hi, thanks for tuning in. Let's see. Thanks for all your comments, guys. Really appreciate it. Boom, hey you, ask a cool question. I know you have a lot of guitars, but what's your favorite right now? That's a great question. I don't have a proper answer. I mean, I don't usually pick favorites, but there are a bunch of guitars here right now that I've been using a lot recently that I really love. One of them is this Gibson Les Paul. I'm not sure if you can see it. It will make an appearance on the channel soon. It's a 2005 Gibson Les Paul Classic. It's really, really a good guitar, guys. This thing sounds so good. I know a lot of people hate this model because it's a 2015 with the Lubaloo logo or whatever. This one does not have the robot thing on the back, and I put some pickup covers on it because I'm not a fan of the zebra pickups. But this is easily the best sounding Les Paul that I've ever had. So that's one of my recent favorites for more classic tones. I even got one of my all-time favorite clean tones out of that guitar on the neck pickup, so that's cool. And I've also really been enjoying this one here. My LTD NW44 Neil Westfall guitar, which is a really cool guitar. Sounds amazing. It's a single humbucker guitar with a bare knuckle nil bomb in the bridge position and a 25.5-inch skill, which is quite long for an Eclipse model. I think those two are among my favorites. So that's my answer for now. Hollow Tool asks, were you the guitarist of Entwine? Great band, by the way. Too bad they split up. Yes, I played in that band. Thanks. Thanks for the question. Yeah, it's too bad. I loved that band. I'm still in touch with the singer. He's a good friend. Maybe we'll do some more music in the future one day. Who knows? More questions, guys. This just keeps going. Thank you guys so much. Redshift AV asks, any general tips for reamping with a real amp and an IR? Do IRs like to be hit at a certain level? No, they don't. As long as just make sure that you're not clipping your device. Any general tips for reamping? Well, I kind of touched on that earlier with my signal chain walkthrough. I talked about my signal chain earlier. So if you want more information about that, I recommend watching the video back and hear me talking about my signal chain. Next question. Hey Corey, thanks for the super chat. I really appreciate it, man. Hey man, at work, can't stay, but I'm putting together a Spotify playlist and want to know if you have any specific music on there. No, not really. You can check out my old band Entwine. And you can check out the Kingdom of Contradiction record, which is cool. And yeah, check out that one. That's a really cool one. I don't think I have a lot of music on there. No, I did make a record with another band a couple of years ago, Valhalla, which you can listen on my YouTube channel, the whole album. But not a lot of music on Spotify right now. I don't even have Spotify. I listen to CDs and stuff. Thanks for the question, man. I really appreciate the super chat. Let's see, more questions. Interesting. Victor Bisudo. What do you think about tunings? If someone put a gun to your head and told you to choose a tuning for the rest of your life, what would that be? E flat, drop something? Like I said earlier, I don't like to pick favorites. E flat is sort of my standard tuning and drops C sharp. So maybe I would choose that. I don't know. I don't want to choose favorites, man. I have a lot of different guitars here. I've got baritones, I've got 7-strings, I've got 8-strings, I've got, Gibson scale guitars, I've got Fender scale guitars, and they all work for different things. So it's really hard to pick a favorite tuning. Really hard. I don't know. Probably E flat and drop C sharp. Thanks for the question, Victor. Appreciate it. Let's see. Constantine M. Cool name, by the way. How do you make everything sound so good? How many years of experience do you have? Thank you very much for the compliment. I really appreciate it. Let's see. I need to scroll back to that question. How many years of experience? Woo! Well, where does experience start? I mean, I started playing guitar when I was about 11, and I remember when I was about 13 years old or something, that I tried to plug in my old Boss multi-effect unit directly into my computer, and it was like the ME5 or something, a really sort of vintage digital processor, and I plugged it straight into my computer, straight from the output jack or something, really crazy. And then I realized, like, wow, it's really cool to be able to record your guitars and overdub and everything. And that's where it all started, and I guess I just, learned a lot over the years. So it's hard to say how many years of experience I have, probably like close to 20 years, but where I don't know when the really serious stuff happened, so it's hard to say. Thanks for the question, though. Thank you. Let's see. RD Ray, another tuning question. Low F and EMG 81, can it sound good? Asking for a friend who tries to get it to sound good. Yes, of course. Yep, that can sound great. I like EMGs myself. Maybe you'll need to use some EQ in front of your amp or a boost to remove some low end or low mids just to make it sound a bit tighter. Depends on the tone that you want, but sure, you can make that sound good, of course. Let's see. Constantine M again. What do you think about the Boss HM2 pedal? It's on the new Line 6 3.0 firmware named Swedish Chainsaw, and it sounds bad for me. Interesting pedal. I had one. I think I found one in my collection a year ago that I forgot, a Japanese one, an old HM2, and I sold it for not a crazy amount, but a nice amount, so it wasn't for me. I had some fun with that model in the Helix for my Helix video. If you haven't seen that one, check back on my channel. It sounds like a chainsaw, basically. It's not for everyone, but it sounds kind of gnarly and cool. Could be cool for certain effects or certain styles, but not my favorite pedal. You wear, at the Source Studio says, you wear a Jurassic Park shirt. You're better than Twitter. Thank you. Oh man, my voice is so bad. I tried to do the Jurassic Park theme, but I sucked. Either way, Jurassic Park rules. Love it. A540 asks, favorite HH2 Heavy Hitters Collection 2 IR. Hard to say what my favorite IR from that pack is. So many great IRs in there. Let's see. Thanks for the comments, guys. Really appreciate it. Constantine M asks, what will you choose? Tube Screamer or Horizon Devices Precision Drive? Well, I haven't tried the Precision Drive in real life. I've only tried the Helix model, and that one sounded nice, but it did have a really pronounced sound when I turned it on. Tube Screamers are a little bit more subtle. So I would choose the Laney Steel Bark that I have here, which I've been using a lot in my 1 amp, 1 song video thing. It's like a Tube Screamer with a couple of voicings, and but the cool thing about this pedal is that it has a bass control where you can either boost or cut your bass, and a treble control where you can do the same thing with the treble regions. So it's really useful for shaping the tone of your guitar. So that's like a Tube Screamer, but a little bit more flexible. I guess I'd choose something like this. And I also have that Mud Killer pedal by Electric Eye Audio. Let me show you that. I have this pedal over here, which is also very cool for really aggressive metal tones. It's also quite flexible. I'm not an expert when it comes to boost pedals, but that's what I've been using recently. Thanks for the question, man. Let's see. Music and tech. Hello, John. I use Helix native plugin and I have noise from my interface. It's like too much. Should I use lower volume? Oh man, I'm sorry, but it's really hard to say where your noise problem comes from. It could be your pickups, it could be your room, it could be your electrical system in your house, it could be like a train track that that comes by your house or something. So it's hard to say where the noise comes from. Sorry that I don't have a good answer, but good luck with that, man. Thanks for tuning in. Jerry Daly. I hope I pronounce your name. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Hi, John. It's 7:20 a.m. in Australia, so I missed most of this live chat. The drums in your videos always sound great. Talk a little bit about how you program your MIDI drums. Sure. I might have to do a more, elaborate video on that soon, but I always do it by hand. I never use pre-programmed grooves. I always program all my drums by hand. And I don't do anything really special. Just mess with the velocities until it sounds natural and make sure the snare sounds slamming when it's rocking. I think I'll do a proper video on that. Maybe write a song first without the drums and then program the drums as we go along. That could be fun. So stay tuned on the channel for something like that in the future. But thanks for your question, man. I appreciate it. Louis Coutelier. Do you recommend to use different IRs when double tracking, like IR1 left and IR2 right? Good question. That could be very cool. I don't do that very often. I do that sometimes, and it has a cool effect. Sometimes it makes the mix sound a little bit as if it's leaning to one side, if you know what I mean. So if you do that, also listen to what else is happening in the mix. For example, if your hi-hat is somewhere on the right, make sure that the brighter guitar sound is on the left to sort of balance that out a little bit. But what I usually do is very simple, just the same IR on the left and on the right. But if you want a more live sounding recording, that could be cool. And maybe it could be even cooler to also use different guitars and different amps and stuff to make it really sound natural and separate from another. So give it really a live feel, you know? That could really work well. Yeah, sure. Let's see. Travis asks, PV Invective 120 or Marshall 410H? Well, I have never tried a PV Invective. It seems like a promising amp, especially for modern tones. The Marshall is great though. The Marshall is great. It has a more classic sound, even with the high gain stuff. It still sounds like a Marshall. So if you want something that sounds British, like a Marshall, go for the 410H. If you want something very modern, you know, high gain and saturated with a very pristine clean tone, perhaps the PV would be better for you. But I haven't tried the PV Invective myself. I would love to, but who knows, one day. Thanks for your question. Thank you. Thanks for all your comments, guys. I can't read them all out loud, but I really appreciate all your comments. Thomas Farrow, are you a self-taught guitarist, John? Kinda. I mean, I did a lot of guitar tab reading back in the day, and I did a lot of self-research, you know. But I did have a guitar teacher for a bunch of years, and I went to a music college for 1 year in Rotterdam. So I did learn some theory stuff from some professional teachers. But most of the stuff that you learn, I think, comes from yourself when you practice and when you feel super inspired and when you want to be able to play something like, you know, Master of Puppets. You download a tab or you listen closely and you really want to play that. The motivation, that's where most of the magic comes from, I think. Thanks for the question. Let's see, more questions. Broken Sky Animations. In regards to the tubey sound, what do you think of the first gen Sun Model T? Will one ever show up on your channel? I have no idea. I've never played a Sun amp. I've heard about them, of course, especially for the stoner doom stuff. But yeah, I don't know if they will ever show up on my channel. Who knows? Should be cool. Could be cool. Let's see. Josh asks, are you going to be reviewing the Mesa Badlander 2? By the way, you are the sole reason I've bought 3 new amps this year. Lol, thanks for the demos. Thanks for the question. I did answer this earlier. I have no plans, no direct plans to feature a Badlander on the channel anytime soon, but I would love to. I did shoot Mesa Boogie a message, and they said that they would forward it to their marketing department or something, but I think my channel is a little bit too small still for that, because those are expensive amps. Who knows, though? But for now, my budget doesn't really allow something like that, and if it would, I would probably buy a Dsl VH2 or VH4. Who knows? But thanks for the question. Let's see, Broken Sky Animations. Do you think I should give up my DSL 50 for a JVM 210? Well, that depends. That depends. I mean, the JVM will sound tighter for the modern high gain stuff. I've never tried a 210. I've only tried the 410, which I really love. I don't know. I mean, the clean tones on the DSL 50 are very bright. If you like that, the JVM 410, which I have, is not super bright for the clean tones. The crunch tones on the JVM are probably a bit more versatile. On the DSL, they're sort of a little bit fuzzy, not in a bad way, but a bit more fluffy. And the JVM sounds a little bit more classic, Marshally on the crunch tones, in my opinion. So it's hard. Can't go wrong with the JVM, though. Can't go wrong. I can't even play says, have you thought about Synergy system amps? I did answer that question earlier, so if you want to know my answer, feel free to scroll back when the video is done. Let's see. I'm going to try to answer a couple more questions because we're almost 2 hours in. That's really incredible. I wasn't expecting that, actually. I was expecting to do this like 20 minutes. But I really appreciate you guys showing up here. Thanks so much. Let's see. Oh, you meant a 410. 410. You didn't mean a JVM. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm confused. Let me move on. Pink Guy says, your beard is like testosterone forest. Any woman would love to dive into it. Thank you for the comments. I really appreciate it. Okay. I'm glad that you dig my beard. I'm glad that you dig my beard. It's very subtle. Have you seen Petrucci's beard lately? Seriously, that guy has a beard. Let's see. Thanks for your comments, guys. Jack Rex. John, you've lost a lot of weight over the course of this channel. What's your secret? My secret is the ketogenic diet. And I was actually inspired by Glenn from, we all know Glenn, of course, from his channel, Spectre Sound Studios. I watched a video from him and I was like, damn, sounds doable, you know? And then I looked into it more and started to do some research. And then within a week, I was like, bam, that's what I'm going to do. And then I lost about 33 kilograms in 6 months. It was a life changer for me. Now, since a couple of months, I've been eating regularly. I'm also doing intermittent fasting as well. So I don't eat in the morning and I don't eat in the evening usually. That also helps. And that's also what I did with my keto diet. So that's a really short answer, but maybe I'll get into that in a future video. Thanks for your question, man. Let's do a couple more questions. Let's see. Rue and Do, what's your favorite newer amp under the $1,000 mark? The PT15 or the orange OR15 in the top 3? I haven't tried a PT15 and the OR15 is great, but it depends on what you need. Is the OR15 loud enough? It's a 15 watt amp with 2 EL84s. It's not loud enough for a lot of people for on stage, but if you like the orange tone, and if you just want to play at home or in the studio, the OR15 is just great for that orange tone. I haven't tried the PT15, so I can't say anything about that. Thanks for the question. Let's see. Yes. The Cali Wolf asks, any experience in Fordin amps? I'm really liking the small sigil amp, although it's fairly boutique, and would consider possibly a Rev due to the fact that they have DI and amp simulation. I answered this question before, but I haven't tried any Fordin amps, but I would be open to trying one. Of course, yes. Let's see. I have a lot of questions here, guys. I'm not sure if I'll be able to answer them all this time, but I'd love to see you guys back here the next time and answer more of your questions, because I'm having a lot of fun here, and I hope you're too. So thanks for tuning in. Travis, for me, the best amp would have 4 channels, clean crunch, AC/DC, and then high gain rhythm and high gain lead. Would be a great amp. I don't have a lot of amps with 4 channels. The Grandmeister Deluxe 40 comes to mind. That's an amp with 4 channels. That's a very versatile amp. Dennis Van D. Hey John, goed bezig, good busy. I like your 8-string playing and was curious what string gauges you prefer. Great question. For my 8-string guitars, I stick with, I always use Elixir strings on all my guitars, by the way. I only use Elixir strings, no exceptions, because they stay good for a very long time. But for this 8-string guitar and also my my Red Sparkle ELTD SC607B 7 Carpenter, I use a 9 set for the bottom regular 6 strings, then a 52 for the low B flat on here, 52. On the Stephen Carpenter, I think I use a 54, maybe a 56, because the scale length on that one is 27 inches, and on this one it's 29.4 inches. And then for this guitar, for the low F, I'm using a 70 bass string, also by Elixir. Great tone. And then for the low string on the red one, I think I'm using a 74 for F sharp. So I think that's what I'm using on the 8 strings. I hope that helps. Thanks for the question. Let's see. I have a bit of a cold, so apologies for the cold noises. No COVID going on here, by the way. Let's see. Very interesting questions. Monique R. Hey, this is Dutch, so it's hard to translate this to English. Are you looking for a doomish band at the moment in my area? Not really, no, but thank you for asking. I really appreciate you asking, but I'm not looking for a doomish band at the moment. If you're looking for someone to mix your doomish music, feel free to shoot me a message or to reamp because I have plenty of orange amps here in the studio. Let's see. Tommy Jones, thoughts on the neural DSP sims? I did mention that question earlier, so I'm just going to skip that one, but thanks for the question, man. Let's see. Michael Herbert, what's your post-processing chain after your cab sim when you're using the MT15? Well, I did also mention this question earlier. Usually I don't do any post-processing really on my guitars, just IRs, and whenever I feel that there needs to be EQ, I don't go for EQ, but then I just choose another IR or choose different settings on my amps. So I don't do a lot of post-processing on my guitars at all. Sometimes a little bit of room reverb, often I should say, but no EQ usually. Let's see if I can answer a couple more questions and then I'm going to call it a night. Thomas Eike Hustoft, do you have any opinion on preamp tubes in an orange TH30, high gain ones, or any specific brand? Well, no, I bought this thing brand new, and this still has the factory tubes in it. I imagine that there are JJ tubes in there, and they sound fine. So I didn't try any other tubes in that amp, so it's hard to say. Let's see. Transferium asks, have you tried the red wires impedance curves in combination with the Ownhammer cabs or any other pre-filtering before the IR? Well, that ties into my other response from earlier. I don't like to use any EQ on my guitar tracks, so no, I don't think that that would be very useful. I think that the Ownhammer impulse responses are very balanced as they are, so I don't think they need any pre-filtering. A couple more questions, 2 more questions, and then I think I'm gonna call it a night, or afternoon, wherever you're from, or morning if you're in Hawaii or LA or something. Thanks for the answer about the 8-string. A 0.74 on these 27 inches is very helpful, but that was way too floppy for me on my 27-inch guitar. 0.084 is the lightest I can endure. Sure, I can imagine that it's very different for everyone. Yeah, I don't know what to say. I mean, if I go that thick for an 8-string, the tone gets too bassy. And if the string is a little bit thinner, the tone of the string gets a little bit more articulate and a little bit tighter, a little bit more narrow, which can be good for the low strings. Alright guys, I think that's all the questions for now. Thank you so much for tuning in. Just want to end with a quick little story that I also opened the video with. So initially I was planning to release a very big video today, 6.5 hour long amp demo called one song 33 amps. So 6.5 hours long, one song reamped through all 33 of my amps, full band mix and also isolated. But I found an error in my video, so I had to go back and re-render the video and then re-upload the video, which is going to take days. So I'm probably going to release that video in about 4 days or something, so it's going to take a little while. So I'm sorry for the delay, and that's why I decided to do this spontaneous live stream. I had a lot of fun here. 2 hours long. I mean, that time flew by. So thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Thanks for all your comments, and also thanks for your super chats, guys. I really appreciate it. I will be back soon here because I really enjoyed it. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. Let me show you a quick little tour of the amps here before I go. Look at that. Look at that. So all those amps will be, you'll be able to see all those amps in the video soon. And I would also like to talk about the whammy pedals sometimes because I'm kind of a whammy fanatic, as you can see. Let's talk about that the next time. So make sure you tune in for the next live stream. And yeah, let's do one more big view. Let's see if I can get more gears in the shot. Check it out. If you want to see these amplifiers on the channel, just be sure to hit subscribe along with the notification bell to stay up to date. And also follow Sonic Drive Studio on Facebook and Instagram. And thank you again. Thank you for showing up. I really appreciate it. I appreciate your questions. I appreciate your comments always. I'll see you soon, guys. Have a great evening, morning, wherever you're at. Be safe, and thanks again. I'll see you soon, guys. Thanks. Cheers.